Okay, we are live on Facebook. Raji, you can start.
Thanks, Sundar. Namaste. If these pandemic times have any silver lining, this is it. The ability to listen to a fascinating narrative on the life and times of a preeminent composer in Carnatic music, Gopalakrishna Bharathi, all of it virtually. On behalf of Shruti, I want to express our heartfelt thanks to Sri V. Sriram for his highly engaging, comprehensive, and yes, with a dash of a signature humor and very moving storytelling that weaved Gopalakrishna Bharathi's artistic life and growth, his mentors, and the history of the times so well as to give us a rich tapestry of the composer's life. What a great choice of kritis to showcase. Our deep gratitude to Bharat Sundar. His sonorous voice, full of bhav, with beautiful enunciation, brought out the lyrical beauty in these compositions to the fore. It was such a visual treat to see all of Sri Rajam's artwork. I really thank Sri Ramanathan of the Artery for the high quality audio visual production. I'm sure many of you will concur with me that we were literally transported to Thillai or Chidambaram during this talk. As always, Shruti wants to thank all of you for tuning in this morning. We seek your continued and enthusiastic support as always. We'll now move on to the Q&A session, which Sri V. Sriram has very graciously agreed to participate in. Raji Venkateshan and myself, Raji Padmanabhan, will be the moderators of this session. So on to the first question, which comes from Dinakar Subramaniam. Do you think the Behar Kriti, Irakam Varamal, was a result of an influence of the Hindustani learning that he had from, or Gopalakrishna Bharathi had from Ramdas Swami?
The tunes of Gopalakrishna Bharathi have all changed over the years. So I'm not sure that we can say that this Behag tune was a direct result of his learning from Ramdas Swami. We don't know what was the raga in which he set this particular composition himself. But yes, the Nandan Charitram over the years has lent itself to a lot of tuning in Hindustani-based ragas. So I would assume that the structure does allow for that kind of interpretation.
Thank you. So we have a question. I'm actually going to combine a question from two people. Mani Subramaniam asks, are there any Sanskrit compositions attributed to Gopalakrishna Bharathi? And Suresh Tyagarajan asks, did Sri Gopalakrishna Bharathi have prowess in languages other than Tamil? And you also spoke of the Maratha influence. So has he composed in any other languages?
I don't think he was fluent in languages other than Tamil and probably Sanskrit, because you can find a lot of Sanskritized Tamil in his compositions. I can't say that he was aware of, at least in my opinion, he was not aware of other languages. He was probably open to the music that came from various regions of South India, but I don't think he was a person who knew languages greatly other than Tamil and Sanskrit. Sanskrit is only a surmise. Tamil is what we can say with certainty.
Okay.
Thank you, Sriram. So again, another question around the various tunes of Gopalakrishna Bharathi's compositions. Sri Sridhar asked about Varimarai Tirukade, which originally, has a Todi version as well. And Balaji Raghotaman, again, I'm combining these two questions because he asked whether the music for Nandanar Charitram that is prevalent today is as it was composed.
Certainly, the music is not as it was composed by Gopalakrishna Bharathi. And Varimarai Tirukade, incidentally, the Todi is of much later vintage. It is essentially from the movie Bhakta Nandanar, where Papanasam Sivan set it to Todi. It appears to have been sung in Natakuranji originally. But I have heard வழிமறை தீர்க்குதே மலை போலே ஒரு மாடு படுத்திருக்குதே. This also I have heard. So there are tunes which I think they were popular metis, tunes that were in existence. People adapted and used what they were familiar with. So if Natakurunji was one, there appears to have been lesser heard. I have heard, I don't know who told me that there was even a version in Saveri at one time. So there have been several versions of this particular song. So we can't say that one was earlier than the other.
So does that apply to all of the kritis of Nandanar Charitram as
Yes.
well?
For instance, this one, Satre Vilagi Irum Pillai, if you go by what is written in the reference tuning in the first edition, it is Satre Vilagi Irum Pillai Sannidhanam Maraikidam. It's like Shakti Sahita Ganapatim Shankara Disevitam. That is the original tune of Satre Vilagi Irum Pillai. So it's very interesting to see how it has changed, and it's become such a meandering composition today, when originally it was a march. Shiva giving marching orders to Nandi, move. So, it appears to have changed considerably over the years.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Is there any record of, you spoke of the famous incident of instance where Sri Gopalakrishna Bharathi came to visit Sri Tyagaraja, and the other two of the Trinity were also coeval to that time. Do we know if he has met with them? And also a little off topic, if they themselves have met each other, of the three of them?
There is no record of Gopalakrishna Bharathi meeting Dikshitar or Shama Shastri. And if you take his year of birth to be 1811 and assume that for the first 30 years he was an unknown person who was, because he came from a very financially and economically deprived background, he must have taken his time to get to be known. So even assume that it was probably only by 1841 or so that he was a personality who could be recognized by Tyagaraja. By the time Dikshitar and Shama Shastri were both dead. So there is probably very little likelihood of their having met him or having even known of his existence. Since to address the part 2 of that question, there is certainly evidence that Subbaraya Shastri, the son of Shama Shastri, learnt music from Tyagaraja. It is also surmised that he learnt music from Muthuswami Dikshitar. The Tyagaraja we know for sure, but Dikshitar it is only surmised. And therefore, Tyagaraja would have definitely known of Shama Shastri. There is no doubt about it. And Shama Shastri would have known of Tyagaraja. That is point number 1. When Dikshitar comes to stay in Tanjavur sometime in the 1820s, Shama Shastri is very much living in that town, and they live on the same street. And there is an incomplete Varnam of Dikshitar's father, Ramaswamy Dikshitar, in the Raga Sri Ranjani, which has been completed by Ramaswamy Dikshitar, completed the Pallavi, the Anupallavi, and the first Charanam of the Varnam. Shama Shastri composed the second Charanam, Muthuswamy Dikshitar the third, and Chinnaswamy Dikshitar the fourth. Therefore, because there is this collaborative evidence that is available, we know that Dikshitar and Shama Shastri knew each other very well indeed. What is not of certainty is whether Tyagaraja and Muthuswamy Dikshitar met each other at all. Today, of course, there is a very reinforced anecdote that when Dikshitar went to meet Tyagaraja, his disciples were singing Koluvayunade Kodandapani, so he sang Mama Patavirama. But this does not appear in any of the official biography. When I say official, the biography is written by people who personally knew these composers. These stories do not come in the 19th century biographies. So I should put it like that. It's only in 20th century that these stories have come about. So whether Tyagaraja and Dikshitar met each other, we have no evidence of that.
Thank you. Another question from Dinakar Subramanian on the Tanam. You mentioned Ghanam Krishna here, Ghanam Tanam. Can you talk about why it did not, flourish or it did not become in parlance?
Even in Ghanam Krishnayar's life account, it is mentioned that this was very, very strenuous physically to sing. It generated a lot of body heat, and it was very taxing and demanding on the performer. My guess is that over a period of time, it must have just faded away. It may have just been a technique which a person displayed their artistic virtuosity. But if you look at the Tanam sung by people like Vasanta Kumari, by Sanjay Subramaniam today, you do find portions of Tanam where there is closed mouth Tanam that is sung. Maybe not to the extent that Ghanam Krishnayar probably sang it. But yes, we do have instances of closed mouth Tanam coming even in present day performances.
Thank you,
Even
Sriram.
Chakudi used to do that in his, I'm suddenly reminded of how he used to sing with his mouth closed and perform Tanam.
Thank you, Sriram. Another question is about the Shishya Parampara of Sri Gopalakrishna Bharathi. You spoke of the first line of students. Do we know any further if the lineage has continued?
No, we have no idea. My guess is the lineage was broken because the great majority of Gopalakrishna Bharathi's compositions were retuned during the Tamil Isai movement in the 1930s and 40s by teachers of the Raja Annamalai Chettiar founded Annamalai University. And a bulk of the retuning happened at that time. The snatches of the Nandan Charitram compositions were definitely in vogue in the Harikatha tradition. And they were singing, but they were not singing full compositions. They were only singing parts of it in order to illustrate the story. So there was a major resurrection of Gopalakrishna Bharathi compositions once the Tamil Isai movement gained ground. So we can't say that it appears that a continuous lineage did not exist.
Thank you. One other question is, you talked about composers who influenced Gopalakrishna Bharathi himself, but do you see a line to the later day composers or whom he influenced, or examples of that?
Certainly, it's a very interesting question. There in Dr. Premila Gurumurthy's monograph on Gopalakrishna Bharathi, she has devoted an entire section where she talks about Gopalakrishna Bharathi's influence on Subramanya Bharathi. And this is not by way of Carnatic compositions, but by way of structure of poetry. So while there are compositions like Oi Nandanare, similarly, Subramanya Bharati, Oi Tilakare, it addresses Bal Gangadhar Tilak using the same phrasing. And then she has given a few examples of how that structure was followed by Subramanya Bharati in his compositions. We do have certain examples. Much later, Shuddhananda Bharati also appears to have been inspired by Gopalakrishna Bharathi's style of composition. This Thandai Thai Irundal, which I played in the beginning, there has been a major question as to whether it's a Gopalakrishna Bharathi composition at all. Lots of people attribute it to Shuddhananda Bharati. But the Music Academy Archives has got some very old publications of Gopalakrishna Bharati compositions, where it is definitely there with the Balakrishna Mudra. But much later, I got to know that this I got to know from Bharat Sundar, that Ponnaya Pillai, who was not of the Tanjavur quartet, but one of the descendants of the Tanjavur quartet. This Ponnaya Pillai lived in the 1940s. He passed away in 1945. He has composed a Thandai Thai Irundal more or less identical to the Gopalakrishna Bharati Thandai Thai Irundal, with certain variations in the lyric. And while Gopalakrishna Bharati addresses his to Andamil Nadam Seyum Ambalavanare. So it is Chidambaram Nataraja. If I am not mistaken, this Ponnaya Pillai composition addresses it to Tyagesha of Tiruvaru. So there are huge inspirations one can see of Gopalakrishna Bharathi's compositions.
Thank you. So there is one more question from Dinakar Subramanian on, is it accurate to say that we don't hear as many of the Vidadi Kritis, the non-Nandanar compositions of Bharati in modern days?
Actually, I would say it's the other way around. We don't get to hear as many of the Nandan Charitram compositions as we get to hear the Vidudi compositions. So, for instance, take songs like Sabhapatiki or Yeppo Varuvaro or Sivakama Sundari, which is in Jagan Mohini. You get to hear these compositions a lot more than what you get to hear of the mainstream Nandanath Charitram compositions. They are not, except for Vadimarai Tirukkude and Satre Vilagi Rumpillai, I think Idudano Thillai Sthalam and a few others. So I would say it's broadly a mix. I mean, maybe, he himself is not, even today, I would say that Gopalakrishna Bharathi, strangely, is not considered so much of a mainstream. So what happens is, given the amount of time that is spent on a Tyagaraja Dikshitar or Shama Shastri set of compositions, Bharati comes only in the next rung of composers as far as the Carnatic music platform is concerned. And so I would say that we hear less of him. And in that, we do hear an even proportion of Vidadi as well as Nandan Charitram compositions.
Okay. So one more question around the influence on dance, of Gopalakrishna Bharathi's composition. It's wonderful to hear Nadana Madinar, but any other further, or did he meet with Tanjore Quartet, for example, or any other influences on dance?
It's very interesting, that question. I noticed it I was thinking, I am not able to say that he knew of the Tanjore Quartet, for the simple reason that the Tanjore Quartet had left Tanjavur by 1832. And they were actually in Swati Thirunal's court in Travancore, at least Vadivelu was. And I think one or two others also passed away early. Vadivelu himself didn't live very long. So it's very unlikely that Gopalakrishna Bharathi would have personally known of the Tanjavur Quartet. Certainly he may have been aware of their compositions, but I can't say that he would have been very closely acquainted with them. Because of the Harikatha performance tradition, I also think that the dance repertoire definitely took a lot of Nandan Charitram as well as Gopalakrishna Bharathi. For instance, Bala Saraswati, very famous, that Mukti Alitidum Thiru Moolanadare Kande Bhakti Seyadavar Pamara Radro. That particular composition, Bala Saraswati was very well known for her abhinaya for that particular song. So that family, Vadimarai Tirukkude, they had songs that, they definitely carried forward a lot of the songs of Gopalakrishna Bharathi.
Thank you.
So there is a question from Kanta Ramaswamy. Did Gopalakrishna Bharathi compose Tamil prose and poetry?
The play is actually a combination of vachanas and songs. So that is the prose. So, the what happens next, that kind of thing. So there is a combination of songs as well as passages, which are strictly, I can't call them as prose, but I would say that they are, in the sense that linkages between the various compositions that come in the play. So he composes the entire opera. So that is his, so it's a full work. So it does have all elements of it.
So one more question from our Facebook page from Sri Swaminathan. He asks about one around Bharati's composition of the opera without the knowledge of these other languages. But also he asks if Bharati was a Vagekara, that's a composer and a singer, why would others change the tunes of his composition?
because there was a break in the lineage. So Bharati did not leave behind a, a set of disciples who would then pass it on to other disciples. It would appear that, of the 5 disciples whom I mentioned, not even one was a performing musician. 2 were priests in the temple of Nataraja in Chidambaram. The other 3 were, landholders in the Mayiladuthurai area. They were brothers. They belonged to the same family. Unless the disciples then took on students themselves and passed on the songs, there was no chance of the compositions complete with their tune being received by us in the present day. Yes, there is no doubt that Bharati was a Vagyekara, because Swaminatha Iyer very clearly writes that he created the whole opera. He performed it. There cannot be any doubt that. And Mayapuram Vedanayakam Pillai sent his compositions for vetting to Gopalakrishna Bharathi. He was playing the violin himself. So there's enough to indicate that this was a very musical personality with a very evolved and heightened sense of aesthetics as far as his compositions were concerned. So there is no doubt that he was a Vagyekara. But he didn't leave behind a set of disciples who could have then carried on. And so we are fortunate that we received the compositions. We are unfortunate in the sense that we don't know which tunes we are singing, as in Bharati, which are the ones that we are singing in different tunes set by people later.
Are there any questions that are still outstanding from the audience?
I think from Facebook, I feel like we've covered everything, Raji.
Okay. I don't see anything else in YouTube either. The presentation was your deep research. It was a trifecta. Your deep research presented to us in such a captivating way with Bharat Sundar's music and S. Rajam's artwork. So my final question is off the topic of Gopalakrishna Bharathi itself, but can you tell us a little bit about S. Rajam, the artist, the sketch and the artwork?
I had the honor of getting to know S. Rajam very intimately sometime in 1999. And from then till his passing, more than 10 years later, I'm not able to remember offhand when he passed away. I think it was 2011 or 12. But I was a regular visitor to his house, and I will not be presumptuous to say that we became friends. That would not be correct, because I'm not in any way his equal. But he lavished a lot of love and affection on me. And I have spent hours chatting about music and discussing art with him. And I was blessed in every way. So he used to, every time, somebody kind of asked him to do a sketch. Even I asked him to do several, and I have some of those lines. By the time I got to know him, he was not doing watercolors all that much. He was just sketching, pen and ink he was doing. And I have several of them with me. He used to give me prints of all the earlier works, of several earlier works that he has done. And one of them is this whole set of the Periya Puranam and several of those thematic representations of the Nandanar Charitram. And so I have been using them for a very long time, and that is how they are here. And I always, every time I look at those sketches, I always feel that Rajam is there with me. So this time, when I made the presentation, I decided that his name should come first, and then mine and Bharat Sundar's later. But Rajam, of course, several heads and shoulders above all of us. He was a great, great, great personality. He was a musician, a musicologist, a teacher, an artist, a film star, a writer. He was several things rolled into one. And it was great fun knowing him. And it was also a great honor to have known that man.
Thank you, Sriram, for talking about such a renaissance man as Sri S. Raj.
Yes, that is the correct thing.
Yeah, so one other actually question came. We were going to end with that, but there's one more question. So I'm going to ask that as well. This is from Vidya Nagarajan. do you have any personal favorites amongst Gopalakrishna Bharathi compositions?
Well, I have several favorites, but if it's very difficult to select one. But there is an Ananda Kutadinar in Kalyani, which I don't know. It does something to you, and I always think only of Sanjay Subramaniam singing it, because I remember it was a Tamil Isai Sangam concert of his in December several years ago, that he did an Alapana in Kalyani, and then he presented this Ananda Kutadinar. And every time, several times when I've attended concerts of his, I used to always think, oh, he must sing Ananda Kutadinar. And in this room where I am seated by way of a housewarming concert, he sang that particular song. So it's very close to me. So Ananda Kutadinar in Kalyani perhaps is my favorite.
Thank you so very much for such an enlightening session. I truly.
There is one more question, Raji.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead, Raji.
This one from Lata Suresh. What inspires Sriram ji to research and bring forth this kind of historical content to us? This indeed connects so well with an Indian multilingual audience like us.
I don't know, in the sense, it's a very long answer. I sincerely hope you're not going to get bored with it. It is, I think, also the circumstances of your birth. So I was born into a family where history and music and art would be discussed practically every day. And it was a part of growing up. And I had a grandmother who was a phenomenal communicator and storyteller. So when I was young, I was the only grandchild left, because I was born much later compared to my other cousins. And then there were a couple of other cousins who came along, but they were not living in Madras. And I was an audience of one. And she used to, I remember her doing Chatre Vilagi Rumpillai and all that. And she would virtually enact the whole of the story, Ramayana. And 1 minute she'll be Shurpanakha, next minute she'll be Ravana. She could be anything. And it was wonderful just watching the way. And so that, I think a little bit of that communication got into me very early. And I was, strangely enough, always known for this talent of telling stories and mimicking, and even in school, in college. I mean, it sounds like a boast, but that was reality. I didn't realize that my life would take this direction at that time. Much later, when I began working on this website called sangeetam.com with Sanjay Subramaniam, the pressure was that I had to put up articles every week to keep the site updated. And that is when this research really began. And I found that there are lots of myths and fallacies in Carnatic music. And people tend to believe only that. They don't like fact. And if you dispute any of the established myths, then you're branded as a heretic or a non-believer and so on and so forth. But I believe that there is a wonderful story in Carnatic music devoid of all those myths. Even a Tyagaraja story can be told very movingly without having to bring that fictitious story about the brother throwing the idols into the river and the Garudan coming. And it's all, I mean, I'm not insulting those stories, but I'm just saying that I personally don't believe in them. So I believe that even otherwise, there is a wonderful narrative that can be told with music and story. So that is why I have made it a kind of a mission of sorts. Even now, thanks to your inviting me, having worked on this whole presentation, I realized that there is a good article to write about how Gopalakrishna Bharathi could not have been born in 1811 if certain other facts in his life are true. So I have now got to sit and work on it to prove that he was probably born much earlier. So there is a story that is coming up shortly. So that's where it is.
That is a very nice story in itself, what brought you in to do all this research and presentation. I believe we have covered all the questions.
Great.
Have you got anything, Raji, that has come up?
I think we've covered it all. Thanks so much.
Yeah, in wrapping.
For this, I thank you for this opportunity. it gives a good thing, something good to do to divert your attention from all that is happening at present. So it was great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and it's been a really captivating talk for all our membership. And we thank our Shruti sponsors for making this possible. Thanks again to Vidwan Bharat Sundar for supporting this presentation. And thank you to all the audience members today as well. We hope to see you next week. We are presenting the Trinity play, so look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you again, Mr. Sriram.
Thank you.
And one more thank you to Mr. Ram Iyer for very nice production. I think he did a fantastic job of creating this whole production.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.